okay?
It started as rioting, and right from the beginning you knew this was different, because it was happening in small villages. It was the blood, something in the blood.
Control room, this is General Stone. All forces under my control prepare to execute code red of my command.
Hey, why are you stealing us inside here?
Our protection!
Abandon selective targeting. Shoot everything. We've lost control.
Shooting everybody.
Makes no sense.
It makes perfect sense. It's code red.
It's been over 2 decades since Danny Boyle and Alex Garland unleashed 28 Days Later, and let's face it, it changed everything. The slow, shambling zombies of old were replaced with fast, primal nightmares infected by the now legendary rage virus and turned into humans driven into a mindless, murderous frenzy. It was fast and brutal, a fevered reflection of our worst instincts. Danny Boyle combined raw, gritty cinematography with a haunting, minimalist score to create something that felt disturbingly real, a breath of fresh air for the horror genre.
In the last year of the 20th century, communicable diseases accounted for an estimated 25% of deaths worldwide.
When you look at tuberculosis worldwide, and malaria, and the other infectious diseases, gastroenteritis in the third world, these are major killers.
Every day, the human body is coming under attack from disease-causing microbes. Nobody is immune.
We're living in a sea of bacteria, let there be no doubt about that. They're in our environment, they're on our skin.
So the idea of a new killer epidemic infecting the country is not far-fetched at all.
Then came 28 Weeks Later, a sequel that expanded on the chaos, upping the stakes and showcasing how quickly humanity can crumble when faced with an unstoppable force of nature. Now, with a recently released trailer for 28 Years Later, instead of 28 months later for some reason, Boyle and Garland are back, ready to drag us kicking and screaming into the next chapter of this apocalyptic nightmare, and it looks like it's gonna be one hell of a ride.
4, 8, 15, 23, 20 miles today.
What's real, what isn't, there's no escape.
Don't look away. If you falter, they'll see.
It's been years since the rage virus first hit our screens, and some of you might not remember how devastating this infection was, or how it turned Britain into a smoking ruin. That's where this video comes in. First, we'll take an in-depth look at the rage virus itself, what it is, how it works, and why it's such a horrifyingly believable creation, with references to the 28 Days Later comics. Then we'll break down 28 Days Later, the film that started everything, how it introduces us to a post-apocalyptic Britain overrun by the infected, and explore the terrifying fragility of human nature when society collapses. Finally, we'll break down 28 Weeks Later, the sequel that expanded the story, gave us even bigger stakes, and proved that humanity's greatest threat is often its own inability to learn from the past. The rage virus, the catalyst for the nightmare of 28 Days Later, is as vicious as it is terrifying. Unlike traditional zombies, this infection doesn't raise the dead, but turns the living into mindless, rabid predators driven by pure, uncontrollable rage. Its terrifying plausibility as a blood-borne disease and its relentless speed make it one of the most harrowing pathogens in horror. The virus begins innocently enough, as misguided science often does. Cambridge scientists Clive and Warren were tasked with isolating the neurochemicals that trigger anger and aggression in humans. Their intention was noble: develop an inhibitor to help regulate uncontrollable anger. Unfortunately, Warren's genius took a dark turn. Rather than relying on pills or aerosols for delivery, he decided to use the Ebola virus as a carrier. Within 2 weeks, the virus mutated violently, turning the inhibitor into the opposite of its intended purpose. Instead of suppressing rage, it amplified it to monstrous levels, birthing the rage virus, an infection that strips its host of all humanity and leaves behind a frenzied, homicidal shell. The rage virus is as horrific as it is efficient. A recombinant mutation of the Ebola virus, it delivers not death but a twisted existence of uncontrollable, violent rage. The infection spreads through blood and saliva with horrifying speed, and a host has between 10 to 20 seconds before succumbing to the virus. Transmission can occur in a multitude of ways: a bite, blood spewed into the face, or even a single drop of infected fluid entering the eyes or mouth. The incubation period depends on exposure. A significant dose, such as vomiting directly into the victim's face, triggers almost immediate transformation. In contrast, smaller exposures, like a drop of blood, take slightly longer, anywhere between 15 to 30 agonizing seconds. Once infected, the transformation is as brutal as the virus itself. Victims suffer violent spasms, convulsions, and painful hemorrhaging as the body succumbs to rage. The infection is marked by its signature crimson eyes, a grotesque indicator of its hold on its hosts. Higher brain functions vanish, replaced by unrelenting aggression and a single instinct: attack anyone that's uninfected. Self-preservation, nourishment, and reason all become irrelevant as the infected launch themselves at their victims with terrifying speed and endurance. The virus also seems to influence behavior patterns over time. Recently infected individuals are most active during the day, while those infected for longer periods shift to nocturnal aggression, a chilling adaptation that makes the infected an ever-present threat. What makes the rage virus even more terrifying is its absolute biological precision. Like its Ebola ancestor, it is blood-borne, highly contagious, and seemingly capable of infecting only primates. Non-primates remain immune, though whether they could serve as carriers remains unknown. While it strips the host of intelligence, it also gifts them terrifying physical enhancements: heightened stamina, speed, and endurance that allow the infected to tear through towns and cities, leaving devastation in their wake.
Get the tar on! Right! Get it on, Hannah! Come on! Red time!
Yet there are rare exceptions to the virus's otherwise absolute power. Certain individuals do possess a natural immunity to the symptoms. These carriers remain unaffected by the rage virus themselves, but are still highly contagious, as their blood and saliva carry the infection, which we'll get into when we go over 28 weeks later. The release of the virus was both catastrophic and preventable. Clive, disgusted by what he and Warren had created, leaked information about the project to the Animal Freedom Front. In a tragic display of blind activism, AFF operatives broke into the Cambridge Primate Research Center and released the infected test subjects. The moment a chimpanzee sank its teeth into one of them, the rage virus was unleashed. The infection spread like wildfire, first inside the lab, then across the city of Cambridge. The media, clueless to the scale of the disaster, dismissed the chaos as rioting, but the public would soon realize this civil unrest was not ordinary. In the days that followed, the virus engulfed Britain with brutal efficiency. From Cambridge, the infection spread south into London, a densely packed urban landscape where panic only accelerated the carnage. The infected then tore through the streets, hunting anyone unlucky enough to cross their path. Martial law was declared as the government and army scrambled to contain the outbreak, setting up military blockades around key cities like London and Manchester. But the virus was always one step ahead. Blockades were breached, Train stations like King's Cross became slaughterhouses, and desperate civilians trying to flee only added fuel to the fire. With basic services failing, from water pressure, electricity to communication, Britain descended into chaos. By day 15, NATO and the United Nations stepped in to quarantine Britain. Airspace was locked down, American carriers were redirected, and military research camps were established offshore, most notably on the Isle of Wight in a last-ditch effort to find a cure. Things only grew worse as the once great cities fell. Manchester, which was a major stronghold, was deliberately set ablaze in a desperate attempt to drive the infected into the countryside. Without fire crews to control the inferno, the flames consumed the entire city. What remained was a smouldering wasteland swarming with hordes of the infected, now free to roam across the countryside in search of new prey. By day 28, what was once a sovereign nation had been reduced to ashes, its cities hollowed out and its people decimated. The remaining survivors were scattered, clinging to life amidst the ruins, while the infected roamed the empty streets in endless, bloodthirsty pursuit. Organized society had crumbled completely. Power grids failed, broadcasts ceased, and the government, along with the military, had effectively collapsed. Britain had become a land of death and silence. But as time went on, nature did what it always does. It starved the monsters. Within 5 weeks to 6 months of the original outbreak, most of the infected in mainland England succumbed to starvation, collapsing where they stood. However, the infection still lingered in isolated pockets, particularly in Scotland, where freshly infected individuals kept the virus alive just long enough to delay its natural course. As seen in the 28 Days Later comics, months after the initial outbreak, the infection found its way to Shetland, presumably through unnoticed carriers or isolated incidents of contact. As the virus tore through the UK, the rest of the world was thrown into chaos. Waves of refugees fleeing the infected created a mass exodus, overwhelming neighboring nations and spreading widespread paranoia. In the United States, panic gripped the public as rumors swirled of the infection crossing the Atlantic. Airports became powder kegs, with a single sneeze at JFK Airport triggering a deadly stampede. Meanwhile, Europe saw its tourism industry collapse overnight, and paranoia reached absurd heights as seagulls along France's coastline were shot down in a futile attempt to prevent the virus jumping across the English Channel. The rage virus isn't just a plot device, it's an unstoppable force. It strips humanity down to its most primal instincts, spreading with devastating efficiency and turning its hosts into living weapons of destruction. What makes it so terrifying is how easily it spreads, how quickly it overwhelms, and how ruthlessly it reduces civilization to ashes. In a matter of weeks, Britain went from a modern society to an unrecognizable hellscape, all because of one reckless act in a research lab. It didn't just destroy bodies, it obliterated an entire nation and left the world staring into the abyss, terrified that they might be next.
And then it wasn't on the TV anymore. It was in the street outside. It was coming through your windows. By the time they tried to evacuate the cities, it was already too late. The army blockades were overrun, and that's when the exodus started.
28 Days Later opens with a chilling prologue. Led by the tip given to them by Clive, the Animal Freedom Front stormed the Cambridge Primate Research Centre and released the chimpanzees infected with the rage virus. The virus then spreads instantly, and within weeks, Britain descends into chaos.
Stop! You've no idea! We have to kill her now!
We then meet Cillian Murphy's Jim, who awakens from a coma in a deserted hospital and discovers that the infected aren't the only threat. Humanity itself, when pushed to the brink, can be just as monstrous. Boyle's direction here is masterful. The empty streets of London, devoid of human life, are haunting and surreal. I think if 28 Days Later succeeded in redefining the genre, it did so not just with its breakneck pacing and primal terror, but with a cast of characters that felt raw, flawed, and painfully human. Boyle's post-apocalyptic nightmare works because the people at its core are believable. They're not action heroes or invincible survivors. They're ordinary people forced to endure a world that's turned inside out. First and foremost is Jim, played to perfection by Cillian Murphy. Waking up in the hospital to a world ravaged by the rage virus, Jim begins as a bewildered, vulnerable everyman, a stand-in for the audience, trying to comprehend the horrors unfolding around him.
Hello? Hello?
Murphy's performance captures this beautifully. His wide-eyed confusion and fragility in the film's early moments make his transformation at the end all the more compelling. As Jim wanders the city, completely unaware of the danger he's in, he stumbles across evidence of societal collapse, abandoned cars, hastily scrawled warnings, and ominous bloodstains. He soon encounters his first infected, fast, furious, and terrifying, before being saved by Selena, played by Naomi Harris and Noah Huntley's Mark.
Oh, I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have done that. Let's go! Let's go! Please tell me what the f is going on.
While initially hesitant, the pair follow Jim to his family home, where he learns that his parents had taken their life and died peacefully in their sleep, confirming that the world he once knew was over. From the moment she's introduced, machete in hand and unflinching in her willingness to do what's necessary, Selena is the film's voice of practicality and pragmatism. Naomi Harris gives Selena a steely resolve, making her a stark contrast to Jim's initial fragility.
So who are you? Well, you're from a hospital, yeah?
Are you a doctor?
He's not a doctor, he's a patient.
But what makes Selena so compelling is the depth Harris brings to the role. Beneath the cold exterior lies a woman who's been broken by the world and forced to harden herself against it.
It might be your brother or your sister. It makes no difference. And just so you know where you stand, if it happens to you, I'll do it in a heartbeat.
She warns, and she proves it soon enough when Mark, her lover, is scratched by the infected. Without hesitation, Selena hacks him to death. This brutal moment sets the tone. Sentimentality has no place in this new world.
Mark?
Wait.
Yet as the story unfolds, Harris allows glimpses of vulnerability to shine through, particularly in her growing bond with Jim.
Got a headache.
Well, why didn't you say something before?
Well, because I didn't think you'd give a shit. So what do you make of them?
Well, they're desperate. Probably need us more than we need them.
Right, because if they slowed you down...
I'd leave them behind.
In a heartbeat?
Yeah.
I wouldn't.
Way things are, we might need 2-3 days to get up there.
We?
Sound carriers in this flat. Me and Hannah do need you more than you need us.
Selena's arc, therefore, becomes about rediscovering her humanity, and Harris delivers a performance that balances strength, fear, and compassion with absolute precision.
She's got a dad and he's got his daughter, so I was wrong when I said that staying alive is as good as it gets.
Jim and Selena's journey leads them to Frank and his daughter Hannah, who are holed up in a high-rise apartment.
Down the corridor, flat 157.
Move!
Where's Dad?
Take him inside.
Cause for celebration, I'd say. And what have we got to offer?
We've got Mum's creme de menthe.
Great.
Brendan Gleeson's Frank serves as the emotional heart of the film. Frank is her father doing his best to protect his daughter in a world that has robbed them of everything.
I can't leave the block if it's just the two of us. Something might happen to me. Hannah'd be alone, I couldn't risk it. But with other people...
Gleeson's performance is warm, genuine, and full of humanity. He's the film's beacon of hope, a reminder that love and kindness can exist even in the darkest of times. This makes his eventual fate all the more devastating.
Like a family.
Do you think they're infected?
No, they're doing just fine.
Night-night.
You're a big softy, Frank.
Megan Burns as Hannah gives a surprisingly understated yet effective performance as Frank's daughter. She's quiet, observant, and far more resilient than she initially appears. Burns avoids the typical cliches of child characters in horror films, delivering a performance that feels authentic and grounded.
It isn't true what Dad said. You need us just the same as we need you. We need each other.
Hannah's emotional strength, particularly in the aftermath of her father's demise, is one of the film's most poignant moments. She's not just a victim to be protected, she's a survivor in her own right, and Burns plays this with a subtlety that adds to the film's emotional depth.
What's wrong? Jimmy's infected! No! No! Jim! No!
You're not eating.
I don't want to eat.
You must eat, Hannah.
I don't want to eat. I want to bury my dad.
After hearing an announcement on the radio claiming there's a solution to the infection, together, the group decide to seek refuge at a military blockade, broadcasting promise of safety.
No, see, this is a really shit idea. You know why? Because it's really obviously a shit idea.
The journey there is both equal parts beautiful and harrowing. Boyle creates wonder through their shopping escapades and long chats while driving across the countryside, while simultaneously building tension through quiet moments of dread punctuated by sudden, brutal violence. The group narrowly escapes infected attacks, but tragedy strikes when Frank becomes infected after a drop of blood lands in his eye.
Dad, you all right?
Hannah, I love you very much. Stay where you are.
Dad?
When Frank succumbs to the virus, Gleason's transformation is heartbreaking. One moment he's a loving father, comforting his daughter. The next he's an uncontrollable monster, a victim of the same brutal world he fought so hard to protect her from. It's a gut-wrenching moment that works because of how deeply Gleason makes us care for Frank. The military arrives, killing Frank and whisking the others away to their compound. This is where 28 Days Later shifts gears. At first, the compound seems like salvation, but it quickly becomes clear that Major Henry West and his men are not saviors.
I promised them women. 8 days ago, I found Jones with his gun in his mouth. He said he was going to kill himself because there was no future. Women mean a future.
The soldiers, isolated from humanity, have descended into derangement and barbarity. West reveals his chilling plan to use the women as breeding stock to rebuild society, and Jim, Selena, and Hannah now face not just the infected, but also the horrors of human corruption.
Man has only been around for a few blinks of an eye, so if the infection wipes us all out, that is a return to normality.
This is what I've seen in the 4 weeks since infection. People killing people, which to my mind puts us in a state of normality right now.
Major West, played by Christopher Eccleston, is a character who embodies the notion that the infected aren't the only monsters. He brings an unsettling calm to the role, portraying West as a man who has descended into moral depravity under the guise of rebuilding civilization.
Secondary to protection, our real job is to rebuild. Start again. The idea was to learn something about infection. Have him teach me.
And has he?
In a way. He's telling me he's futureless. And eventually he'll tell me how long the infected take to starve to death.
He's not a raving villain. He's logical, articulate, and disturbingly reasonable in his twisted worldview. This makes him all the more terrifying, and his performance adds a layer of horror that goes beyond the infected. It's the realization that when society collapses, human beings are often capable of atrocities far worse than any virus.
We're just hoping for
the answer to infection. Or it's here, though it may not be quite what you imagined.
Starting the world again when the rest of the fucking world hasn't even stopped. Just think about it. How could infection cross the oceans?
There is no infection, it's just people killing people.
He's insane!
Escaping execution using nothing but his wits, Jim's transformation from an ordinary man into a savage warrior underscores the film's central theme: survival comes at a cost. He's forced to adapt, shedding his innocence to become a hardened survivor. Murphy handles the transition with finesse, embodying a man who's both terrified and capable of brutal violence when he's pushed to the brink. To overcome the overwhelming odds, Jim unleashes the infected, and in a stunning role reversal, becomes more monstrous than they are, killing the soldiers with primal rage. Yet it's this brutality that saves Selena and Hannah. The final moments are hopeful. Jim, Selena, and Hannah, now living in the countryside, are seen waving to a jet, hinting at a possible future beyond the nightmare, which is confirmed in the 28 Days Later comic.
In maintaining a realistic edge to the film, the filmmakers decided to use a cast of less familiar actors.
Jim is like the everyman, do you know what I mean? He's just a guy off the street, he's a bike courier. He wakes up out of a coma in a hospital, and the hospital is just completely abandoned, and he walks out onto Westminster Bridge, and then it's just desolate. There's signs of that something unusual has gone down.
What makes the characters in the film so memorable is how grounded and believable they are. Boyle and Garland crafted a world where survival strips people down to their rawest instincts, and the cast brings that vision to life with performances that feel painfully real. Cillian Murphy's journey from vulnerable everyman to hardened survivor anchors the film, while Naomi Harris's Selena, Brendan Gleeson's Frank, and Christopher Eccleston's Wes provide the emotional, moral, and thematic contrast that give the story its depth.
I have this wonderful relationship with my daughter, and we're hiding out in survival mode in a high-rise flat. He was just a very beautifully written character.
We have a spare room. There. Again, Selena.
At its core, 28 Days Later works because it understands that horror isn't just about monsters or gore, it's about people. The rage virus may be the catalyst for the chaos, but it's the characters who make the story resonate. To me, their struggles, their flaws, and their moments of humanity are what truly elevate the film beyond a standard zombie flick.
Selena is one of the people who's survived the rage virus that's been set loose. She's had to shut down emotionally in order to survive, so she's quite cold.
28 Days Later is a masterclass in horror filmmaking. Danny Boyle made a movie that is both deeply personal and horrifyingly broad in its implications. The rage virus is a brilliant invention, a fast, unstoppable force that taps into primal fears of contagion and chaos. But the true genius lies in how Boyle uses the virus as a backdrop to explore human nature. The infected may be terrifying, but the film's true villains are the soldiers at the compound. This dual threat, monsters outside and monsters within, gives the story its relentless tension.
I thought the script was terrifying. I thought it was a real page turner.
I was reading it thinking, oh, this is my kind of film. And so it's like I'd go to watch it in the cinemas and so.
That's what I said to him. I said, I like this, Danny, it's terrifying. Good.
The cinematography is iconic. Shot on digital video, the grainy, handheld visuals give the film a raw, documentary-like realism, and the desolate streets of London are unforgettable, a haunting vision of a world brought to its knees, while John Murphy's score builds a crescendo of dread that perfectly underscores the film's most intense moments.
To create a more urban feel to the images, the filmmakers chose digital video over film.
I think it's beautiful for urban work. It has a grittiness about it that's magnificent for your city movie, really. This is the way we record our lives. We are surrounded in this city by cameras. They're everywhere, and they're all these DV cameras, all types of them, and they're recording our every motion all the time.
It definitely suits the story, suits the British story, particularly that sort of slightly rough edge.
I think when you want something like this to feel really real, you know, it's an appropriate medium to use.
At its core, 28 Days Later is a story about survival and the cost of hope. It strips humanity down to its most primal instincts, fear, violence, and the desperate search for connection. The characters are compelling because they feel real. Jim's transformation, Selena's pragmatism, and Frank's love for his daughter anchor the horror in genuine emotion.
What attracted me most about the script was the intelligence of it and the issues that it was trying to investigate and the comment it was making on society in general.
Thematically, the film asks unsettling questions. How far would you go to survive? What happens to morality when society collapses? And are the infected really the monsters, or are we? These questions linger long after the credits roll.
We've fled this whole notion of rage and, you know, the modern malaise and the infection of it. And we come into something that's even more frightening, which is where that notion of survival hits base and where it's every man for himself.
The world is over, and it's just how you deal with continuing life.
It wasn't just one of the best horror films of the 21st century, it was a landmark piece of cinema. It revitalized the zombie genre, inspired countless imitators, and set a new standard for what horror could achieve. It was raw, relentless, and unforgettable, a grim reminder that the scariest monsters might just be the people staring back at us in the mirror.
The notion that we can put our faith in institutions and forget about them is what the danger is.
Infection knows no boundaries between countries, so there has to be international collaboration in tracking the spread of infectious diseases. But in the very nature of evolution, new ones will evolve or change and be able to cause disease. We have to be ready to deal with them.
The notion that you can say, well, I have a gun there, so that means I'm safe, is a nonsense.
It's a code red.
I know what it is. These kids are with me. My name is Andy! Scarlett! Andy!
You think it's a drill? Of course it's not a fucking drill.
We've got to find Aunt. It's okay. We'll find her.
I can't get a shot. I cannot be target specific.
Please be on the lookout for a young boy, age 12. He must be immediately evacuated from the containment zone.
Take him down. Left sector, 3 o'clock.
If 28 days later was a shot of adrenaline, 28 weeks later is a full-blown assault on the senses. Juan Carlos Fresnadillo's sequel doesn't just revisit the nightmare, it expands it and then unapologetically smashes humanity's feeble attempts at rebuilding into dust. Where Danny Boyle's original film explored the fragile humanity of survivors in a crumbling world, 28 weeks later strips that humanity bare and asks a darker question. What happens when we're arrogant enough to think we can control chaos? The answer, of course, is unrelenting carnage. It takes place, as the title suggests, 6 months after the initial outbreak devastated Britain. The rage virus has burned through the population, leaving the country a desolate, infected wasteland. The film introduces us to a fragile period of recovery. The US military, in all its well-meaning hubris, has declared parts of London safe and begun repopulating the city with survivors. They've rebuilt quarantine zones, fortified districts, and established a sense of order. On paper, it looks like hope. In practice, it's a powder keg waiting for a spark. The film follows a handful of characters navigating this illusory calm. Chief among them is Don, a man haunted by the choices he made during the initial outbreak, and his 2 children, Tammy and Andy, who are brought into the city to reunite with him. It's a family drama at its core, layered with gut-punch moments of horror. Of course, in a world where the rage virus still lingers, safety is a fleeting illusion. All it takes is one mistake, one moment of compassion, ignorance or arrogance for the virus to reignite and tear through the survivors like wildfire. This is where the sequel excels. It doesn't just pick up where its predecessor left off, it expands the scope of the nightmare. Fresnadillo trades the intimacy of 28 days later for something larger, bloodier, and more relentless. The infected aren't the only threat once again. Bureaucratic failure, military overreach, and humanity's inability to learn from its mistakes combine to paint a picture of systemic collapse. It's a film as much about human failure as it is about the ferocity of the rage virus itself. It's not just a zombie movie, it's a merciless examination of what happens when humanity tries to rebuild on the ashes of its own ruin. The rage virus may be the stuff of fiction, but its implications feel chillingly real.
She's a carrier.
Are you saying she has the ability to infect others?
Yes, sir.
Please, sir. We need some time to study her. We need to run some tests.
Run tests on her corpse, Major.
If 28 weeks later is a brutal, unrelenting vision of humanity's failure, then its characters are the broken, desperate souls swept up in the carnage. The sequel delivers a cast of tragic, flawed individuals, some heroic, others selfish, but all undeniably human. Their stories underscore the film's central theme. When containing the virus becomes the only goal, morality and hope are often the first casualties.
It's been 5 days since your boyfriend ran out on us. If he's still breathing, which I doubt, it won't be the pasta he's interested in.
Jacob.
Who were chasing you?
My mum. My dad. They're trying to kill me.
The film begins with a punch to the stomach. We're introduced to Robert Carlyle's Don, a man holed up in a countryside cottage with his wife Alice, played by Catherine McCormack, and a group of survivors.
Oh, our children are safe, aren't they? Totally. Thank God we paid for that school trip. Can you imagine if we hadn't have done?
It's a moment of fragile calm, shattered instantly when they let a child inside and the infected chasing him swarm the house. The opening sequence is a relentless, heart-pounding display of terror as Don, in a moment of raw survival instinct, abandons Alice to save himself. Watching him flee, his face twisted in guilt and panic, sets the tone for what's to come. A world where survival is brutal, selfish, and often anything but heroic.
Just leave him! Leave him!
Don! Help us!
Don is the heart of the film, as a man defined by guilt and cowardice, and played with gut-wrenching conviction by Carlyle. His performance in the opening sequence is nothing short of masterful. In a matter of minutes, he shifts from a loving husband fighting to save his partner to a man consumed by panic and fear. It's a moment of raw human weakness that haunts Don's every decision from that point onwards, revealing him to be flawed and selfish and painfully real.
Oh, fuck. Oh, shit. Oh, shit. Oh, shit. Oh, shit.
Fast forward 6 months and Britain is a wasteland. The infected have starved to death and the US military has declared the country safe for repopulation. They establish a green zone in London's District 1, a fortified area where survivors are brought back to start anew. On the surface, it looks like hope, but as we all know, hope in the world of the rage virus is a dangerous illusion.
Colonel, I'm watching the new arrivals disembark.
Yes, Major.
No one told me that we're now admitting children.
The story kicks into gear with the arrival of Don's children, Tammy, played by Imogen Poots, and Macintosh Muggleton's Andy, who were brought to the Green Zone to reunite with their father.
How old are you, Andy?
12.
I think that makes you the youngest person in the entire country.
It's here we see the cracks in the foundation. Don, now a caretaker in the safe zone, understandably hides the truth about what happened to Alice from his children.
Your mum and I were hiding in the house, just trying to stay alive, I suppose. We were doing okay for a while, and then we were attacked. I tried to go back. She was already gone. I got to this military camp, and you know the rest, you know, I've been in quarantine waiting for you guys to come back. I'm sorry.
Tammy and Andy are the emotional core of the story. Children forced to survive in a world that has no place for innocence. Poots in particular delivers a standout performance as Tammy. She balances vulnerability with resilience, portraying a teenager who's both terrified and determined to protect her younger brother. There's a quiet strength in her performance that grounds the chaos around her.
I get worried I'm gonna forget what she looks like.
You won't forget.
Promise.
Macintosh Muggleton as Andy brings a sense of tragic innocence to the role. He's a child caught in a nightmare, grappling with the loss of his mother. Together, Tammy and Andy serve as a glimmer of hope, a faint, fragile reminder of humanity in a world consumed by rage, but they simultaneously represent heralds of the apocalypse as the film nears the end.
Do you think Mum's still alive?
Not this time. When we were separated, I thought I'd lost you too.
We won't get separated again. We'll stay together, whatever happens.
Whatever happens.
When Don reunites with his children, Carlisle brings a quiet, tortured vulnerability to the role. You can see the guilt eating away at him, even as he tries to hold his family together. But the tragedy of Don is that his flaws become his undoing.
It was really fast, you know, chased us, chased your mum, and we were trapped.
Was there nothing you could do?
I couldn't do anything. She was already gone.
Unfortunately for him, the past has a nasty habit of catching up, and it does so with devastating consequences. Tammy and Andy, driven by curiosity and a need to find a photo of their mother, sneak out of the Green Zone and make a horrifying discovery at their home. Alice is alive. She's infected but asymptomatic, essentially a carrier of the virus who doesn't turn.
Interesting iris variation. Do one of your parents have the same? My mother.
Catherine McCormack's Alice, though underused, serves as a catalyst for the film's events. Her immunity to the virus makes her both a scientific miracle and a walking apocalypse. And McCormack brings a quiet, haunting sadness to Alice, particularly in her scenes with Don, where her trust in his betrayal collide with tragic inevitability.
I shouldn't have run away. I was scared. Please forgive me. I love you, Don. Yeah. Oh God, I love you too.
This is where 28 weeks later shifts from simmering tension to all-out carnage. Don, overcome with guilt and love, sneaks into Alice's quarantined room. It's a tragic, heartbreaking moment. One kiss is all it takes for the virus to transfer, and Don becomes infected. What follows is a horrifying transformation as he turns into one of the monsters he once fled and annihilates his partner. Carlisle's performance here elevates Don from mere plot device to a tragic embodiment of the film's bleak message. With Don then rampaging through the medical area, the infection spreads like wildfire through the Green Zone, tearing apart what little order the military had established. The calm is obliterated, replaced by panic, screams, and rivers of blood as the infected rampage through the streets of London once again.
Abandon selective targeting. Shoot everything. Targets are now free. We've lost control.
Abandon selective targeting. All targets are now free.
Confirm order?
Target everyone at ground level. No exception.
Idris Elba delivers a brief but memorable turn as General Stone, the cold and unforgiving leader overseeing the Green Zone. Elba's performance exudes authority and menace, perfectly capturing the detached, bureaucratic mindset of someone tasked with containing the uncontainable.
We have issues of disease and sanitation, not to mention we don't fully understand the virus yet.
Major, what are you afraid of?
Stone isn't evil, he's a product of the situation, a man forced to make impossible decisions even if it means sacrificing innocent lives. From here, the film becomes a desperate fight for survival. Tammy and Andy, now hunted by both the infected and the military, find unlikely allies in Scarlett, played by Rose Byrne, a compassionate medical officer, and Jeremy Renner's Doyle, a sniper.
I need to get them out of here immediately.
No exceptions. It's a code red.
I know what it is. These kids are with me. My name is Andy! We have to find him. I'm gonna get him out of here. I'm gonna get you both out of here. Trust me.
Look, take him out! Take him out!
Why aren't you at your post?
Why aren't you? Look, you guys do what you want, but I'm gonna get the fuck out of here. You coming?
Scarlett recognizes the significance of Andy's potential immunity, and believes his blood could hold the key to a cure. Meanwhile, Doyle, one of the few military personnel with a shred of humanity left, defies orders and protects the children, as the military resorts to a brutal Code Red protocol, total extermination of everyone, infected or not, to contain the outbreak.
Their mother had very special blood,
But they might have.
so their lives are far more valuable than mine or yours.
I got it.
Rose Byrne's Scarlett is the closest thing the film has to a voice of reason, representing science and hope in a story defined by chaos and destruction. Her performance is understated but effective, balancing compassion with determination. Scarlett isn't just a bystander, she's proactive, risking everything to protect the children and potentially find a cure.
Flynn, goddammit, I know you can hear me. The code red, chain of command. I'm stuck out here needing extraction. Better be there, because we will be.
Then there's Jeremy Renner as Doyle, the sniper who becomes the film's most heroic figure. Renner's performance is grounded and charismatic, offering a rare glimpse of decency amidst the chaos. Doyle starts as a soldier following orders, but as the situation spirals out of control, he chooses to defy his superiors and save Tammy and Andy.
Hey, you okay? Makes you tired, huh? Me too. I need you to help me, okay? Help me with your sister. You got that?
Renner brings warmth and humanity to the role, making Doyle sacrifice one of the film's most gut-wrenching moments. It's a performance that cements Doyle as the moral anchor of the story, a man who chose to do the right thing, even when it cost him everything.
You pop the clutch when I tell you, okay? You get them to the stadium. I'll meet you there.
The film's set pieces are relentless, showcasing the sheer scale of the chaos. The firebombing of London is a haunting spectacle, a city reduced to ash as the military sacrifices everything to stop the virus. But even their most extreme measures fail. The infected are too fast, too relentless, and the virus spreads faster than it can be contained. Fresnadillo's direction here is unflinching. The violence is chaotic, raw, and disturbingly realistic, driving home the futility of human efforts against the rage virus.
Bring in biosoldier units, fan out from the pre-designated positions. Use of chemical weapons authorized. Repeat, all units, chemical weapons are authorized.
Keep your head down.
Amidst the destruction, the characters shine. Don's arc is a tragedy of guilt and consequence. His cowardice at the start comes full circle when he becomes an instrument of the virus's return and the chief figure hunting his children down. Tammy and Andy then serve as the emotional heart of the story, children burdened with surviving a nightmare world they never asked for. Scarlett is the voice of hope, desperately clinging to the belief that a cure is possible, while Doyle's sacrifice is a gut-wrenching reminder that heroism in this world often ends in blood. The final act is a relentless sprint to the finish line. Tammy, Andy, and Scarlett make a desperate escape from London, chased by the infected and pursued by the military. Unfortunately, Scarlett is killed and Andy is bitten by his infected father, forcing Tammy to kill the only parent they had left.
We'll find Andy.
Luckily, Andy's immunity saves him, and the siblings are airlifted to safety by Doyle's friend Flynn, but the damage is done. The final scene shows the rage virus spreading to Paris, its crimson tide sweeping across Europe. The infection isn't contained, it's only just begun, likely as a result of Andy himself.
Am I one of them? No. No, you're not. We stay together. Whatever happens. No! No, Andy!
I'm so sorry. I'm scared. I shouldn't have really.
Where 28 Days Later was about survival, this film is about failure of governments, systems, and individuals. The US military's attempts to rebuild Britain are undone by one simple mistake, and the consequences are catastrophic. The rage virus doesn't just destroy individuals, it obliterates societies, exposing the fragility of human order and the arrogance of thinking we can control nature.
What if it comes back?
It won't come back.
What if it does?
If it comes back, we kill it. It's code red.
At its core, 28 Weeks Later is a brutal, relentless sequel that expands on the original while delivering a gut-wrenching dose of nihilism. It's a film about guilt, survival, and the horrifying reality that sometimes, no matter how hard we try, we're powerless to stop the inevitable. In this universe, the rage virus doesn't forgive, it doesn't forget, and it's never truly gone.
We understand that it did not manage to go airborne and that the last infected human died 6 months ago.
We weren't here 6 months ago.
Major.
What makes the characters here so effective is their humanity. They're flawed, fragile, and painfully relatable. There are no indestructible heroes. Don is consumed by guilt, Scarlett dies trying to do the right thing, Doyle sacrifices himself to save others, while Tammy and Andy are left to navigate a world that's been torn apart by adults who failed them.
When he first described how he was going to do the film, it was this idea of this father figure, who the film begins through his eyes, if you like, and then his children who were abroad at the time of the infection are brought back. But it's got this idea of looking at this thing of enormous value to the world is centered in this family, and it's played out through the family drama, if you like.
Especially because a small thing like a family could affect to the whole nation. This is one of the things that we try to develop in the screenplay.
So it was really to try and think about, what the world would look like, or what would happen to the United Kingdom if there were only 500 people left.
In the hands of a lesser cast, 28 Weeks Later could have been a soulless exercise in gore and spectacle, but the performances elevate the material, grounding the film's relentless destruction with a raw, emotional weight. It isn't just a movie about the end of the world, it's a film about the people caught in its path, and that's what makes it truly unforgettable.
I think this one is more about survival. It's a survival film. Virus survives at the end, and the main characters always try to survive to the worst of the nightmares.
It's something that's so real and so tangible that it's terrifying.
It's all about that survival. It's all about that relentless, intense feeling of how you survive and what would you do if you were in that situation.
At the heart of 28 Weeks Later is its unflinching bleakness. Humanity's attempts to clean up the wreckage and repopulate Britain are doomed before they even begin, and Fresnadillo doesn't pull his punches. Governments fail, systems collapse, and the people caught in the middle don't stand a chance.
To make it real, to make this story real, if I put myself as audience watching the movie, I would love to see a movie that you could smell the characters and the environment, and you could feel that story could happen really close to you.
Nowhere is this failure more evident than in the military's response. The US occupation of London and their so-called Green Zone might look promising on the surface, but it was always built on naivete and hubris. As soon as the virus is reintroduced, the military's measures spiral into unhinged desperation. Code Red, the indiscriminate slaughter of both infected and uninfected civilians, is a chilling depiction of humanity's instinct to destroy when control is lost. Firebombing, snipers shooting at crowds, chemical weapons, the military's safe solution is every bit as terrifying as the virus itself.
It was like a sort of clean new world.
And they use this as a Garden of Eden that they can start again from with a few thousand people and slowly spread out into the country and repopulate the country. So you've got this wonderful visual stuff at the beginning of them. You see them beginning to clean up the mess, that there's this terrible mess that's been left. And then there's optimism that they can start again and get things going again. And of course, because it's this kind of film, it's not quite that easy and things start to go wrong.
There comes a point where infected pretty much take over this protected area that we had. And Code Red means take out everyone, exterminate anybody, infected or not. So here's the thing, the very people I was there to protect, I'm now there to take out.
Another thing that sets 28 Weeks Later apart is its scale. Boyle's 28 Days Later was raw and intimate, focusing on isolated characters navigating a post-apocalyptic wasteland. Fresnadillo, on the other hand, zooms out and delivers a broader, more devastating vision of collapse from the perspective of multiple characters.
28 Weeks Later, there's more action, there's more jumps, there's less suspense. In the first film, you didn't know what was happening. The audience woke up with this guy who was in hospital and they were with him. What the hell is going on in this city? This time, you see exactly what happens from patient zero to the disease spreading. You see it on a much bigger scale.
The cinematography embraces the larger scope, capturing the firebombing of London, the chaotic military responses, the streets awash with blood and devastation in ways that feel operatic yet disturbingly real. From a technical standpoint, it's a beautifully grim spectacle.
It's a big action film done on a pretty small budget, and a way to achieve a lot of that is realistically, and we've used a lot of handheld camera. I think that's partly because we wanted to look realistic. We wanted to feel sort of believable.
That's why I made the movie as a kind of horror documentary. The style of the documentary is delivering and conveying something real. On the other hand, it's so difficult to shoot in that way. You need a lot of cameras, handheld style, and especially in the acting and the art department, and everything should be linked to that idea. It's the best way that you can face this story about an infection taking over London.
The violence here is also brutal, fast, and relentless. The infected tear through crowds like rabid animals, leaving blood and screams in their wake. It's not just about jump scares or gore, it's about the overwhelming sense of hopelessness that sets the film apart. You're not watching heroes overcome impossible odds, you're watching ordinary people get crushed under the weight of forces they can't possibly stop.
The main concept we had in mind is not to repeat the first idea, which was a fantastic idea with Danny Boyle and Alex Garland. I think this one is more about survival. It's a survival film.
The nation is rebuilding, provisional government is trying to repopulate the city, and one special family is trying to start over, trying to forget the important loss of the mother.
I think that was the main problem we had from the beginning, to make a movie about something so big as a repopulation of the country. That's why we wanted to follow this family.
Fresnadillo combines sweeping apocalyptic imagery with chaotic handheld shots to put you right in the middle of the mayhem, which, along with the pacing and John Murphy's score, once again, works together to create a relentless, suffocating experience.
They're being pretty faithful to the guerrilla style that 28 Days was, which made it stand out from your average horror film, So they're keeping that style.
Enrique did a lot of handheld. I mean, he got beat up every day. Blood always on the camera. It's always covered in plastic and right in the thick of things. Even Danny Boyle, who did some second unit stuff, got beat up and hurt his shoulder. Couldn't do it anymore.
What makes it so effective is its refusal to offer any hope or comfort, unlike the ending of 28 Days Later. The final moments of the film, infected hordes swarming through Paris, deliver a final punch to the gut. Tammy and Andy are likely dead, and the virus has spread beyond Britain, and the rest of the world is next. It's an indication that some things can't be stopped, and some mistakes can't be undone.
One of the new things in this sequel is, for the first time, you're tracking one infected character, watching how a man is becoming an infected man, and for an instance, you are there with him, feeling that kind of rage and trying to understand what's going on with these infected people.
One of the first things Juan Carlos said to me, what I thought was quite interesting, he said that I really feel for the infected. I asked him why, and he said because they have lives too, and they have children, they have things that they've lost through all of this, you know. And I thought that's a lovely, sensitive way of looking at this and portraying this and try to see, even through the madness and the rage in the character's eyes, that there's something else in there, that there's a heartbeat still to the person. And maybe this is the main difference from the previous film, that the infected in this, represented by Dawn, through Dawn, are actually have logic, and he's still a person deep down inside, and he's still got some kind of desire to track his children. That is bringing them back towards him and keeping that little family unit.
While it lacks the raw intimacy of 28 Days Later, and has a few plot holes like Don's ability to have access to Alice, who should have been more restricted, covered with cameras and surrounded by armoured guards, it more than makes up for it with its sheer scale, intensity and brutality. It's a bigger, bloodier and more ambitious sequel that refuses to let the audience look away from the carnage.
Both the films have been very difficult to make because they've been reasonably low budget, filming in London and trying to do something a bit different. There've been a lot of railways, undergrounds, major sites, gas attacks, helicopters falling apart. It's been really difficult, but luckily the production team have done a fantastic job. Juan Carlos and Enrique wanted to find a Spanish-speaking cameraman, and it came up with Enrique Chediak. He was really energetic, positive, had really great ideas about how to doing the day for night. A lot of the film had to be shot day for night because of shooting at night. All the lights are on in London. We couldn't turn all the lights off because the lights should be off, obviously, in a post-apocalyptic city. And I think he's been really fundamental part of the team. And, you know, the three Latin producer, cameraman and director really have been the heart of making the film.
Fresnadillo shows how the rage virus isn't just a fictional infection, it's a reflection of our own fragility, reminding us that when the world burns, we might just be the ones holding the match.
Infection is taking over your body and you lose your control. And the rage is dominating you. And I love the idea about rage. Rage is a feeling that you can see and you can feel in our world. That's the main idea about the infection. Because infection is rage, and rage is a feeling that you could understand very well.
From its pulse-pounding opening scene, the frantic escape sequence that sets the tone for the entire film, to its bleak, unforgettable finale, 28 weeks later proves itself to be a worthy successor to one of modern horror's greatest achievements.
He brings just a really fresh visual experience to this film.
He's an individual filmmaker, you know, he's not just going to do what the first film did, he's going to bring his individual touch to it, really, and it's got tremendous kind of flair and energy as a film, and it's a highly individual piece of filmmaking, so we were lucky really to persuade him to come and do it.
With that said, I hope everyone is having a safe and fun holiday season, and if I don't see you on my Movie Nights with Niat podcast this weekend, I wish you all a happy new year. Thanks for giving me the best job in the world. I really appreciate it, and know that I wouldn't be here if it weren't for each and every one of you. It's Niat here with Film Comics Explained. Thanks for stopping by.
Since it began, who have you killed? You wouldn't be alive now if you hadn't killed somebody.
I killed a boy.
But you had to. Otherwise, he'd have killed you.
It's a boy.
Wait. Don't know who's out there.
Don, it's a kid. Don! Help us!
It might be your brother or your sister or your oldest friend. It makes no difference.
Right, because if they slowed you down...
I'd leave them behind.
In a heartbeat?
Yeah.
I wouldn't.
It's just us.